Organizations today struggle with implementing technology. This leads to long implementation period cycles, abandoned projects, and confusion. I'm going to share with you 4 things I learned to keep in mind with implementing technology. 1, we want to build an internal implementation team. Second, I'm going to talk about how to assemble a pilot group. Third, I want to talk about just-in-time training methodology. And then last, how to build a feedback loop. Companies today face a digital imperative: adopt new technologies effectively or face competitive obsolescence. We can agree that it's essential to update our systems as we move forward into the future. But the truth is that most team members find the process of technology implementation complex, slow, and confusing. How many of us can admit feeling discouraged and confused when hearing about X technology was coming into effect on a specific date? I have. I've been there myself, but why is it confusing? Why does it feel discouraging? The truth is, most leaders fail to share the vision and direction for technology that can change the business. You see, they've already gone through the process of discovering technology, researching, being pitched, and so they already bought into the value proposition of X technology, which is going to bring them X amount of time and cost savings. So the result of this approach is pushback from disgruntled or habit-oriented individuals who don't understand how the new technology speaks to an existing system. Another thing that I find is when having inadequate training, it definitely, is another hurdle to overcome. A 2013 survey by MIT Sloan Management said that according to 78% of the respondents, achieving digital transformation will become critical to the organization over the next 2 years. So we're definitely in agreement that it is important and that's going to happen. However, 63% said the pace of technology change in the organization is too slow. Now, let's take a look at Kodak as an example. They got left behind because they missed not once, not twice, but 3 times the opportunity to digitalize their business. They failed to see how their customers wanted to interact with their photos. The lesson we can take away here is that real innovation requires risk and vision. And if you play it safe, the cost of staying in the game will whittle you down until you have nothing left. Companies that succeed tend to have leaders who share the vision and define a roadmap. They create a cross-collaboration within different departments, and they reward their employees for working towards it. As working as a consultant, I've definitely had, great positive successes when I work with companies when this vision is clear, when the reason why I'm there is clear to the entire company. So here are the 4 steps that help me successfully help other companies implement technologies in their workplace. First, we have to understand, and I'm sure you're familiar with the change curve, which is a popular and powerful model used to understand the stages of professional transition and organizational change. It helps you predict how people react to change so you can help them make their own personal transitions and make sure they have the help and support they need. Having this model in mind has really helped me, really think about my approach when it comes to change. Nobody likes change. It's a very hard thing to do. So you can see that there's that resistance and skepticism. This is where I feel that creating internal teams, or a task force if you want to call them, is so important because you're creating a group of influencers who understand the vision and can share that with their fellow project team members. These influencers have a sense of ownership and responsibility to deliver to their colleagues. I don't want to leave my colleagues down. So what I've seen is that typically the burden, is shifted away from either the CEO or that leadership team who is making the decision to move, to seeing the shift to the vision be carried out individually by employees. When involving this internal team or task force, it's really going to help you identify the pain points of the current process. And one thing I've seen, it starts to create a culture within the team of speaking up. I know I have a hard time speaking up in a large meeting room, but in an intimate team setting, it's easy for me to speak up. The other benefit to this is it allows a company to identify the implementation focus instead of underestimating the scope and importance. So by predicting the likely responses to change, you can accelerate the development, remember that curve, and provide your team with timely help and support. The next is pilot group. Now, I will admit, when I first started doing consulting, I didn't create a pilot group. It was through many lessons learned after each consulting job that I started to receive the value and the benefit of a pilot group. Now, why is a pilot group important? Here's why. You're able to test those workflows before you scale out to the company. It gives you that testing space before you send it out to the masses. But that's not the only thing you're able to do. You're able to build, credible demos. You want to always put contents to, what you're showing and why you're changing, and also why you're implementing, this technology. It helps you validate the points within those pain points identified at the discovery phase. And if those points are not the focus, then this is the opportunity to make a course correction. Another reason to make a course correction is oftentimes you may miss things. You may have not seen that entire process at the beginning, but you're seeing that in a pilot, those steps or those processes are needed to be added or edited. So this is the perfect opportunity to work out all the bugs and make any course corrections at this point. Now, one important thing about when creating a pilot group is you want to create an inclusive team. Now, the reason we want to have a team that's inclusive is we want, folks from the pilot group to be from all levels of leadership, as well as all levels of the process we want to implement. We don't want to just have people focus from one specific department or one specific phase of the new process. We want to make sure we have, the entire representation of that new workflow or process from A to C. This is highly critical because, again, there's things you're going to miss. There's things that may not be mentioned, but there's that one thing that someone on the team does daily that maybe perhaps is taken for granted or that nobody knew, but that's an important step to make sure you have a successful process or workflow. So this is why I highly recommend that your pilot group not only stays, with a specific focus, but you want to make that, wide enough that's going to cover your entire process. Next, training. So how many of us remember everything we learned from our last training? Raise your hand. I'm not going to raise my hand because I don't remember. In fact, I remember having gone through many trainings in the past, and sometimes they're exciting, sometimes they're not. I think sometimes I'm already tired from all the training that's going to happen. But why am I not excited? Why do I already feel tired? And that's because there's going to be so much to learn, and it's completely impossible for me to remember. So, but why do we feel we need to train on everything someone may need to know. Early on, when I, was doing training as part of my consulting, I learned really quickly that the person who is a plan reviewer, they don't really need to know how to create some basic settings in Bluebeam Review, for example. So they were absolutely bored out of their mind, and that's fair, and they're totally right to be bored out of their mind. Half the class was engaged and the other half wasn't. And then I felt bad because I was wasting their time. But I also knew that this was of value to train. Then I discovered the just-in-time training methodology, which focuses on the role and responsibility. And oh my word, does it make a difference? I was able to curate training for clients and really focus the training just on the roles and responsibility. What this did, it did a couple things. One, the lead that I was working with didn't feel stressed and overwhelmed thinking that they needed to pull a lot of people out of the project to sit in an 8-hour training for the next 4 days. So that really helped create sort of a schedule of half the people to come to training and the other half can continue working. So that was a really great benefit. The other thing that I really noticed is that people were starting to connect the dots in training. The training was very specific to what they needed to achieve in their day-to-day work. So it was easy for them to digest the information. Another thing I recommend here is to build different phases of training. Phase one should definitely be that low barrier entry of what they need to know right now. The second phase should be focused on sort of those tips and tricks. And then, of course, third can be advanced. Another great way to extend the life of your training investment is creating learning resources. This can be a mix of videos, how-to tutorials, or even hosting open office hours. I've tried them all, and they all work very differently. I like the video component because those can be played on demand at any time for anyone. Now, the reason why I like the videos is how many of us always tend to look to our coworker to ask them a question? It's super likely. If our coworker is not available, what's the next thing we tend to go tap into for the answer? Most likely Google, right? Now, these videos are a great way to be able to provide that information and the answers that they need fairly quickly for the entire project team. How-tos are wonderful. Open office hours are also great too because you can set aside maybe 2 or 3 hours in your day once a week. And sometimes it's always great to have that in-person engagement. And it's also a great opportunity to see how things are going. Did the training make sense? Is this new technology, hitting on those pain points that were first identified? It's a great way to have that one-on-one interaction. And last is, having that feedback loop. Now, I used to think that once technology or a new process was created, that's it. Everything was done. We're shutting it down. See you in 10 years until the next major upgrade. But I found that the feedback loop is so important in an implementation process because it keeps an open door on how to have a continuous improvement. It allows you to gather feedback directly from the team. And a good way to do that is through a lunch and learn or in office hours, as I just mentioned. It's also a great platform to gather that feedback and always looking for ways to improve your workflow. So at the end, everyone feels that they own the process and they're part of the process. Now, it is important to measure what you're implementing. This is going to serve as a great reminder on why you embarked on this journey in the first place. So it's always important to measure, that before stage and after stage, and also measure the productivity levels. I vividly remember working with a specific city here on the West Coast where they went from reviewing their paper permits from 50 days down to 15 days. That's a huge difference. That's more than double of the time savings right there. I also know another state in the South who also increased their productivity level by 39%. Also, huge savings right there. Another way to capture the savings from team is by creating surveys. I know sometimes it can feel impersonal, but short, quick surveys at very specific milestones are highly beneficial to be able to measure where you are in the process and how you're doing. Now, I want to have some real talk. This is a Women in Construction conference. And I hope that the things that I've identified as steps, I kept them light and simple and digestible. I hope that, by creating those internal teams, it's going to really help you, gather the right information for the scope of work. I hope that having the pilot group helps you test the workflows and have a successful launch company-wide. And I also hope that, looking at just-in-time training methodologies extends that investment of your training, as well as creating a feedback loop to have continuous improvement. But this is a Women in Construction conference, and I definitely want to sort of step away from that, professional role and just have some real talk about, some of my thoughts throughout this journey. So a couple of years ago, I went into a women's panel discussion meetup, and they were asked to share, a piece of advice, to the women in the audience. And this really resonated for me. And she said that when you walk into a meeting, tell yourself you have nothing to prove. And I took that to heart because I honestly suffer from imposter syndrome. And I'm constantly, talking things through in my head. And I'm constantly trying to figure out, processes, or am I doing my job right? Or I'm constantly in that doubt mode. And in the end, the reality is nobody knows what they're doing. They may seem they know what they're doing, but nobody knows what they're doing. And by taking this advice to heart, I know that when I go into a meeting, I'm constantly stressed out about, am I bringing value? Should I talk now? Should I give my feedback? Did I say that right? And once I started to tell myself, I have nothing to prove, it allowed me to just relax and sit back and be present in that meeting. And that allowed my, natural passion for this AEC industry to just click in and to really just, be myself and just show that natural passion and enthusiasm, on its own. So that's something that if that resonates with you, on the next big meeting, remind yourself you have nothing to prove. You are where you are because, you have proven, to others that you deserve that seat at the table. Cut the noise of, those imposter syndrome, conversations. I definitely struggle with it today, but it's something that has helped me continue to overcome that syndrome. The other thing is I want to, share with you is give yourself grace. I tend to beat myself up really hard, and I have to remind myself to give myself grace, to let it go, and to be okay with it. Also, admitting when I don't have the answers. Having, sat at the consulting chair for quite a number of times, the truth is I don't know all the answers, and it's okay to say that. It's okay to say, "Oh, I don't know the answers." No worries there. And then the last thing I want to share with you is always look ways to improve. Wherever you are. I'm in a new role at Bluebeam, and it's definitely been challenging. But my drive to continuously improve and seek other and network and learn has been something that, has been part of my DNA that I'm very proud of. But I want to just share that with you. I hope that everything I shared with you was beneficial, it was valuable to you. I hope that you're able to take away some of these four things from my experiences that I've learned. I hope that my real talk was something that resonated with you. And if you would love to connect, I would love to connect with you via LinkedIn. If there's anything I can do for you via my network, please let me know. Please reach out. But with that, I want to say thank you so much for attending the session, and I hope you are enjoying your time at this conference.